Here is a bit of wisdom from your Uncle Cooper. Tires exist on a spectrum. On one end, you got too much tire. On the other, you don't get enough. Both ends are rip-offs. You're either paying for more than you need or needing more even after you pay. So if you want a tire that costs what tires should cost and does what tires should do, go right for the sweet spot. Go with the Coopers. Cooper!
At TopCon, we know a thing or two about a smooth surface. Roads and highways, piece of cake. Airports, let's just say it'll be the smoothest landing you've ever had. But what about when you want to go fast? Real fast? No, faster. We've helped cars go faster than they've ever gone before. Broken a few lap records along the way. Want the best paving performance? Go to the source. TopCon, always one step ahead.
Karting and motorsport enthusiasts, Lucas Oil School of Racing is America's #1 Formula Car race school. Enjoy modern paddle shifters, pit speed limiter, and onboard video along with integrated data systems. Get started today with our 2-day basic or advanced course. Lucas Oil School of Racing is the official school of the road to Indy. We can also qualify you for your SCCA license. Get started today by visiting us at www.lucasraceschool.com.
As your uncle.
Voice of the Road, Indy, presented by Cooper Tires, and drivers on the throttle and pulling off a pit lane as we begin the weekend here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca with a 45-minute practice session. 11 drivers in total making the trek out here for the West Coast swing, and we had some warm weekends, hot and humid throughout the midseason, but again here into September, and much more comfortable conditions, especially being out here on the coast, of course, here in Monterey, California, right close to Seaside, right close to the bay itself. 57 degrees right now, not surprising as we have oftentimes in the morning here at Laguna Seca. Some cloud cover, very, very comfortable temperatures at 57, potential to get up to the high 60s today. And I expect to see some of the clouds burn off throughout the day as well. So drivers working their way out onto the racing facility, working their way now through turn number 5, coming around what is a very challenging 2.238 mile 11-turn racetrack. Obviously, the calling card of this particular facility, the corkscrew, and so many drivers that we have had come through this road to Indy, loving the opportunity to experience this particular segment of the race course. Unbelievably challenging, that left-right combination coming back down into Rainy Curve, the huge drop in elevation coming down through that particular corner is definitely a passing opportunity if you're able to get to the inside of a driver, but also, I believe, kind of sets up as well for a pass into to turn number 10 and 11. That's, I think, one of the keys to this racetrack. If you get the corkscrew wrong, then you're losing it through Rainy Curve, and we've seen drivers dive down the inside of 10, and of course that big braking move to the inside of turn number 11, the final turn on this racetrack. 11 drivers, as I said, in the program here. Obviously, one of the big news that we saw at the last race at Portland, a couple of new drivers making their Indy Lights debuts last weekend up in Portland. Rasmus Lindqvist, who did extremely well here, was a winner here actually in the Indy Pro 2000 category back in 2019, stood on the podium both of those races, and was able to win the final race of the season here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca back in 2019. Was set up to run Indy Lights for Belardi Auto Racing in 2020. The series went on hiatus, and then Belardi Auto Racing actually shutting the doors to the team. All the assets being sold to Tim Neff from TJ Speed, that they will resurface next year. But it kind of took away the opportunity for Rasmus to run Indy Lights, as instead been doing some sports car racing. But in the late run here, after Toby Sowery vacated the seat at Juncos Racing, they were able to put together a deal with his former team, Ricardo Juncos, and Juncos Hollinger Racing. And that has given us Rasmus Lind in the number 51 machine, the driver out of Gothenburg, Sweden. Tremendous to have him here with us, the SKF PWR Racing Husqvarna sponsor machine. Rasmus showed some good speed at Portland, and I expect this particular track, I think, is going to play for him. Coming off the victory 2 years ago in Indy Pro 2000, he'll have a really good feel for this track and what he wants out of this race car, especially having driven last weekend at Portland. The other rookie driver who has been one of the stars of the Indy Pro 2000 category of the last 2 years, Manuel Suleiman from Mexico City, Mexico, in the Telcel WB store, Ambital, Multi-Quip, and a Hawk machine. Suleiman running for HMD Motorsports, taking the seat of the number 59 machine that was run throughout the season by Southern California driver Nikita Lastishkin. Nikita ran the majority of the first part of the season, but ran out of budget and had to get out of that car for the rest of the year, but is working very diligently to get himself back on the racetrack in 2021. So we look forward, of course, to having Nikita back with us. But with Nikita's absence, the debut for Manuel Suleiman last weekend, as I said, at Portland International Raceway, and did extremely well with his HMD Motorsports and Global Racing Group team. His teammates qualifying 4th for the opening round, and I believe 5th for race number 2. So Manuel showing good speed in the 59. 45-minute practice session. Drivers with 4 sets of fresh Cooper tires to utilize throughout this weekend. One sole 45-minute practice session, 2 half-hour qualifying sessions, and again, of course, the 2 races as well. Races will be 35 laps or 60 minutes. One race tomorrow afternoon, the next on Sunday morning. Again, we say hello to those of you tuning in to the Sirius XM 205 channel or the Road to Indy TV app. Some of you tuning into IndyLights.com or potentially watching on the race overseas in international coverage. The full IndyCar Radio Network crew will be back, of course, for Saturday and Sunday. Anchor Nick Yeoman alongside Jake Query and Michael Young. Pit lane will be myself, Alex Wolf, and Dan Rosanowski on the IndyCar side of the broadcast. Quick time so far, a 122.807. Drivers just kind of cruising around the racetrack, well off the pace right now. Just getting a feel for it, trying to bring some heat into the tires. Carryover set of tires from Portland as well. So the 4 fresh sets of tires, but they are allowed to take 1 used set from the weekend at Portland. That way, when they get out on track here to get a feel for the facility for the first time, not having to burn through a new set of Coopers. So the used set. Drivers just starting to lay times down right now. Still probably about 5 seconds off what we're going to see. Track record here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, set by a driver who will race IndyCar this particular weekend for Carlin. Max Chilton, the Englishman, a 114.232 back in 2015, 6 years ago. He has the race record as well at 116.163. Very first year of this Dallara IL-15 race car. Spencer Piggott scoring the championship here and winning the scholarship to move to the NTT IndyCar Series in 2016, which he did with Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. Spencer, of course, taking advantage of the scholarships all the way up the ranks to get himself to IndyCar, now a top sports car racer. Tough year competition that year for sure with Spencer Piggott and Max Chilton, as I said. Ed Jones as well was there when Carlin Racing came over for their North American debut. Of course, Carlin, a world juggernaut in single-seater junior Formula car racing with series in F4, F3, F2. Many different programs over in Europe. Trevor Carlin does a tremendous job. The culture at that team is one of excellence. Just a single Carlin driver here in Indy Lights right now. Christian Bogle out of Covington, Louisiana, Bogle was a teammate of Alex Peroni earlier in the year, but Alex, like Toby Sowery, electing to suspend his efforts before Portland. Drivers getting a feel now for this very challenging racetrack. A number of the teams did get a chance to come out here earlier in the season to get a test in, HMD Motorsports being one of them, so I would expect to see HMD Motorsports pretty strong out of the gate. Not surprising, 4 laps in. David Malukas, a 119.320. Daniel Frost for Andretti Autosport in the DenJet sponsored number 68, now P1. Frost out of Singapore. Daniel comes in here now currently in the 5th place in points. Really good weekend at Mid-Ohio for Daniel Frost. 2 pole positions and a couple of 2nd place finishes. Most recent event, Portland, Oregon, and Portland International Raceway, an 8th and a 6th. He'll be looking to bounce back. Daniel, one of the drivers we expect to see back in Indy Lights in 2021, and he will be a championship contender for sure, a former winner in the Indy Pro 2000 category. First 10 minutes in the books here. Malukas a 118.413. The championship battle is the one we're really watching here, obviously, as we're into the stretch run for the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires. Just 4 more races to go. The 2 here at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca this weekend. And then 2 weeks from now, we'll cap things off at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course to see who is going to win the scholarship. $1.25 million, which essentially translates into 3 races in the NTT IndyCar Series, including a shot at the 2022 Indianapolis 500. David Malukas and Kyle Kirkwood, you could not be closer. The 2 young Americans battling it out for this championship right now. Just 5 points separate the 2 of them, each getting a win at in Portland. Malukas started the weekend off with the victory on Saturday, and of course, Kirkwood coming back with an amazing pass at the Festival Curves to take the victory there. Just 5 points separate the 2, but you dig it even deeper, and you look at the stats and how incredibly even both of these drivers have been. David Malukas, of course, for HMD Motorsports out of Chicago, Illinois. Kyle Kirkwood for Andretti Autosport from Jupiter, Florida. Both drivers with 7 wins. Both with 14 top 5 finishes, and both of them only finishing outside of the top 5 on 2 occasions. It's incredible. David Malukas 13th in the opening round. Kirkwood was 9th. They actually made contact. Kyle Kirkwood got into the back of David Malukas at the start of the opening race of the season in Turn 1 at Barber Motorsports Park. That's one of those races for both of them. A 7th in race number 1 at Road America for David Malukas. The other finished outside the top 5, and a 12th in the next race for Kyle Kirkwood at Road America. He was actually leading the race when a camber shim popped out on the left front of that race car. Would have given him 6 straight victories. He went on a streak of 5 of 6. Through that middle part of the season, from a sweep of Detroit, a win in the opening round at Road America, a sweep at Mid-Ohio. And it's been a tremendous run as well of podium finishes. To be honest, you look at this body of work, in the last 10 races, Kyle Kirkwood has only been off the podium once. Twice for Malukas, once for Kirkwood, which is just tremendous. The one kicker is this. And we haven't seen this. And again, we're a long way from Mid-Ohio in the finale. Still 4 races to go. But you go back to 2014, and we had a tie at the end of the season in the championship between Gabby Chavez and Jack Harvey. So what do you do to break the tie? Obviously, you go to the most amount of wins. Well, Harvey and Chavez both had the same amount of wins. You had to go to 2nd place finishes to see who was going to win the scholarship to move to IndyCar. And Chavez able to take that position. Of course, Jack Harvey was able to come back the next year. Another 2nd place finish in 2015 for Jack Harvey. And then he, of course, was able to connect with Mike Shank and put their program together that has grown over the last number of years. But in that tiebreaker right now, Kyle Kirkwood with 4 2nd place finishes. David Malukas with just the 2. Still 4 races to go. Long way until we find out who's going to be crowned champion. But interesting to, of course, always look at the numbers, especially long-range planning to see who's going to potentially hoist the championship trophy on Sunday evening in Ohio. About 32 minutes remaining in the session. Quick driver on top of the charts right now. The number 28, Kyle Kirkwood, getting down to a 117.015. Linus Lundqvist in the second spot. David Malukas third. Robert McGinnis fourth. And Benjamin Peterson in fifth. Linus Lundqvist, the other driver who has scored victories. Only 3 drivers have got wins so far this year, 7 for Malukas and 7 for Kirkwood. 2 victories for Linus Lundqvist, who is now third place in the points, won the opening round at Barber Motorsports Park, and was able to get a victory at the front end of the doubleheader at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course as well. Third place in points, 73 points back with a very comfortable margin over Benjamin Peterson, who is in fourth. I want to say another 73 points back from Lundqvist to Peterson. So Linus pretty much has P3 locked up. And he's not totally out of play in terms of the championship, but both Malukas and Kirkwood would have to have DNFs likely through to the end of the season. 32 points rather on offer each weekend for Indy Lights. Of course, 30 points for a race win, 1 point for pole, and 1 point for most laps led. But we don't have that we have in the other series. We don't have a point for fastest lap. And the reason for that is Indy Lights, like IndyCar, has the push-to-pass feature, 50 extra horsepower. But unlike IndyCar, in Indy Lights, drivers are not able to use it defensively, only offensively. So if you're getting past, somebody's trying to make a move on you, they can use the push-to-pass. You can't use it to defend. So the reason why we don't offer a bonus point for fastest lap is if a driver gets out front, they never get a chance to use the push to pass. So unfair to be able to give points for guys that are actually further back. So just 32 points on offer each day. 64 in total for the weekend and 128 remaining in the season with just 4 races to go. So yes, there's an opportunity for Linus Lundqvist to still win this championship, but he would have to essentially sweep the remainder of the year, and both of the championship contenders up front, Kirkwood and Malukas, would have to have disastrous weekends. And with a shorter field of just 11 cars, they're still getting some points for finishing 11th. Kirkwood down to a 116.9. Starting to feel it a little bit here, but remember, we're still running on those used tires from Portland as well. No one has bolted on fresh rubber. And I'm not even sure that anybody will. I don't know that you want to roll the dice. You may, obviously, a qualifying sim at the end of the session is a potential, but 57 degrees trackside right now. It's going to be 68 potentially when they qualify this afternoon. How much do you learn? Are you wasting a set of tires? That's something, of course, that is really up to the guys that get paid more than I do. Team strategists, engineers, feeling whether or not it's a good gamble to try to get a feel for it. I will say this, qualifying important here at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. Not an easy track to overtake on. Obviously, turn number 2, coming downhill into that left-hander. Seeing opportunities to pass into turn number 5, maybe aggressively on the entry to the corkscrew. Out a rainy curve to 10, of course, the braking down into turn number 11. That's an opportunity, but qualifying well normally will pay off with a strong finish. Also like the fact that you go back and look at the drivers who were here in 2019, and Rinus VK, very impressive on the weekend, scoring the victories. Oliver Askew with a win as well. Robert McGinnis, top 4 in both races. That should play well for McGinnis here. He's currently in the 6th spot. Number of drivers in the pit lane: David Malukas, Linus Lundqvist, Benjamin Peterson. Long 45-minute session, so lots of time to get a feel for the car. You don't need to be out there banging laps. A lot of teams have tested here, as I had said. For a driver like Manuel Suleiman, though, he hasn't had a chance to drive this track in this particular car. And I've been in lots of conversations of late, people asking me, what is the biggest step coming through the road to Indy. Obviously with the 3 different levels, the scholarships, of course, at all 3 levels. You win at USF 2000, you win the scholarship to move to Indy Pro. Similarly, you win Indy Pro, over $700,000 scholarship to move to Indy Lights, and of course the $1.25 million scholarship for the driver who wins Lights. And included in that, top 3 drivers in Indy Lights this year will earn an IndyCar test later in the season, as will the Indy Pro 2000 champion. But back to the question of what the biggest jump is. And most drivers I talk to who have been through the entire ladder, number one is, of course, the jump from karting into cars. It's just such a different dynamic. You can be a top-level national race-winning kart racer, but just the dynamics of the suspension and the aerodynamics, there's just such a different animal coming from karts to cars. You learn a lot about racecraft, but you do have to get a feel for what it's like to drive a race car. But the big jump that every one of the drivers told me was Indy Pro to Indy Lights. 250 horsepower to 450 horsepower. The massive increase in grip, in braking, in overall downforce. A number of the corners that you may have been flat out in an Indy Pro 2000 car is not the same when you jump into Indy Lights. It's a big jump from Indy Pro to Indy Lights. So a driver like Manuel Suleiman from Mexico, who started and ran half the season, or majority of the season, in the Indy Pro 2000 car with Juncos Racing, before making the jump up here to Indy Lights, rather, it's a big jump for him to get a feel for that. He's really got his body dialed in and focused on running the Indy Pro car. But then you almost double the horsepower. He did 3 days of testing, I believe, coming into Portland, or the race in Portland. So he's never been here in this car. So for Manuel Suleiman, currently in that 10th position, good feel, good baseline. He'll want to fully maximize all 45 minutes that are available to him here this morning. Once again, if you're tuning in here on Sirius XM or the Road to Indy app, we're back on the racetrack at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time for qualifying 1.5-hour session to set the grid for the opening race, which will take place tomorrow afternoon at 12:45 Pacific. We'll roll things up in the morning at 9:45 with qualifying for race number 2. That race on the track at 10:15 a.m. Pacific time on Sunday, ahead of the NTT IndyCar Series main event. If you're a race fan that was out here at the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca back in 2019 when we were here, the car is obviously a little bit different in terms of the fact that new for 2021 was the installation of the Halo type device that we have on these race cars. And I, for one, will admit that I wasn't sure how they were going to look. I wasn't sure what my thoughts were going to be in terms of having the Halo on the car, but once we installed it, I think that the good folks at Dallara did a tremendous job. I love the looks of this race car, even with the Halo. I think that it blends in so beautifully to the actual lines of the race car. I'm a huge fan of this Dallara IL-15. I really think it's one of the most beautiful open-wheel formula cars you see in the world. And great racing, great young talent. Just a tremendous springboard for the future stars of the NTT IndyCar Series. Still over 2 seconds off the track record set by Max Chilton back in 2015, a 1:14.232. Still not seen any fresh rubber as either. That's going to, of course, provide a ton. Qualifying track records always come with super low fuel loads right at the very end of a session. Brand new tires, right in that optimum window. We do go qualifying this afternoon. We'll talk more about what that window is all about, because so many factors come into being able to lay down a fast lap. .116.370 for Kyle Kirkwood, 116.569 for Devlin DeFrancesco. Runner-up last year in the Indy Pro 2000 Championship with Andretti Steinbrenner Autosport. DeFrancesco less than 0.2 of a second behind Kirkwood now, who has rolled the number 28 Andretti Autosport machine into pit lane. Service as well for the number 26 of Linus Lundqvist of the Gula sponsor machine. Lundqvist currently in the 6th spot. Rasmuth Lind in the 51 for Juncos Racing. Another driver like Suleiman, who has never driven the Indy Lights car here. Man, impressive. 116.634 for Lind. Just over 0.2 behind Kirkwood. David Maluka is currently P4. Daniel Frost rounding out your fast 5. Linus Lundqvist in 6th, Robert McGinnis in 7th, Stingray Rob 8th, Benjamin Peterson in 9th, Manuel Suleiman 10th, and Christian Bogle 11th. At bonus point in qualifying, you think about the fact that we've got 4 more qualifying sessions to cap off the season. That when you have a championship as tight as we have, and I laugh about this because I don't think everybody gets too point crazy earlier in the season, but coming down the end, they certainly do. Every position on the racetrack, every opportunity to get those points, and being able to qualify up front at both WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca and the Mid-Ohio Sports Car course, so crucial. Both tracks extremely difficult to overtake. You have to be very aggressive, very assertive. So if you qualify on the front row, first couple of rows, very likely you're going to come away with a top 5 finish, potentially a race win. So qualifying will be crucial this afternoon. Just about 21 minutes remaining in this 45-minute session. It's been clean so far. Devlin DiFrancesco on top. DiFrancesco in the Power Tap Dallara Andretti Steinbrenner Autosport number 17, the driver from Miami, Florida. Now quickest. 9 thousandths of a second quicker than Kyle Kirkwood. The Andretti cars sitting 1 and 2. Frost in 5th. McGinnis in 8th. Top 9 separated by less than a second. Benjamin Peterson out of Copenhagen, Denmark, actually lives in Seattle, Washington, has since he was a young kid. Portland was kind of his home race. We laughed about the fact that he'd never actually raced at Portland International Raceway, although he's lived up in the Pacific Northwest for a majority of his life. Benjamin rolling out some new sponsors that particular weekend, including Oberto Beef Jerky and Thriftway grocery stores. Dirtfish, the big logo on the side of the car. Colibri Capital and Ameriprise Financial, along with Saybelt on the sponsorship roster for Benjamin Peterson. I've said this several times throughout the season here, second half of the season as well, that the Benjamin, I think one of the drivers I've been very impressed with. One of the, probably the driver who's probably found the most speed, really developed, most improved throughout the season here. He's gotten quicker and quicker, and really has had a pretty good run through the second half of this season. Peterson coming in currently in the 4th spot in points. And I kind of look at Road America as kind of being where he turned things around. Second in the opening race at Road America. A couple of 7th place finishes, followed up by an 8th at Mid-Ohio, but then at both races on the oval at Worldwide Technology Raceway, podium finishes for him. A couple of 3rd place runs, 2 4th place runs as well at Portland. So 4 consecutive top 5 finishes for Benjamin Peterson here for the second half of the season. And I got to think that with the speed he's shown, he's going to keep that up throughout this weekend. DiFrancesco P1, 1:16.3, as was Kirkwood, 1:16.3. 9,000 separated 2 of them. Rasmus Lind for Juncos Racing in the number 51, currently P3. He's rolled into pit lane. Daniel Frost coming back out as well. I think we're still on scuffed tires. Yeah, nobody's going to fresh rubber yet. It's just one of the things about this particular racetrack. I don't know that we'll see qualifying sims at the end of this run. I'll look down to see whether anybody does it. I wouldn't be surprised to see guys, especially with a half-an-hour session, potentially using 2 sets for each qualifying run. You go out and essentially do a quality sim with the first set of fresh tires at the start of a session. Actually make changes to the car based on this particular session. Go back out with their used rubber. Actually, they can't use that used rubber, pardon me. Go back out with the fresh tires, because you can only use the carryover set for 1 session. I'm sure they'd love to use it for 1 more, just like I'm talking about. Just let us go back out for the first couple laps after making some changes to the car. But no. Carryover set from Portland only allowed here in practice, so they'll go fresh rubber to start qualifying. I would not be surprised to see most teams come in both qualifying sessions and go 2 sets of stickers. Just that qualifying sim, of course. Do that 2-3 lap qualifying sim and then put those tires off to the side and use them in a race. Get a chance to ride along here with Manuel Suleiman, driver from Mexico City, Mexico. Suleiman in the 59. Actually lives in Puebla. Telcel, Anahawk, WB Store, Ambiental, and Multi-Quip. Sponsors on the machine for Manuel Suleiman. Race winner at Indy Pro 2000 last year. He raced with D-Force Racing. A lot of skills for this young driver, and I hope that we see him full-time in Indy Lights next year. If we do, I think he'll be a promising rookie for sure. And the rookie crop is going to be stout next year. We've got a number of very talented drivers in Indy Pro 2000 that we expect to try to make that jump up to Indy Lights for 2022. I think everybody, of course, with the opportunity to run the car throughout the season. I think some of the teams that potentially were able to pick up the dynamics of the race car, how they changed with the addition of the halo onto the car. Obviously coming out of the gate very strongly, HMD Motorsports and Andretti Autosport, but it was really HMD coming out of the gate with the strongest runs. Yeah, HMD, I want to say they won 5 of the first 6 races. Lundqvist winning at Barber and Indianapolis, Malukas at Barber, St. Petersburg and Indy, and then of course St. Petersburg as well. Kyle Kirkwood getting in there to steal one away, but HMD pretty good out of the gates to challenge the longtime juggernauts here over the last number of years. Andretti Autosport, of course, winning championships with guys like Oliver Askew and Colton Herta. Rather, Pato O'Ward, pardon me, not Colton, Pato. We've had some great rivalries in this program too, have we not, over the last couple of years? It was the Andretti inter-team battle between Colton and Pato, fighting it out tooth and nail. Pato coming away with the championship. 2019, we just really continued the rivalry that had been gone through the entire road to Indy between Oliver Askew and Rinus VK. It's been a ton of fun to watch, and that's, I think, why so many of us in the road to Indy community is really hoping that Oliver Askew gets an opportunity to get back into a full-time ride next year. You look at the rivalry between Oliver and Rinus over the last number of years. Back in 2017, both drivers raw rookies in the USF 2000 program. Rinus running for Pabst Racing and Oliver Askew for Cape Motorsports. Oliver able to take that championship there in a tough fight. Both drivers won a ton of races. 2018, he moved to Indy Pro 2000. It was Rinus VK's turn. He moved to Juncos Racing. He was able to take the championship, get the scholarship to move to Indy Lights. Askew, I believe, finishing 3rd that year. Then they went at it back again in Indy Lights, hammer and tong. Both drivers getting race wins. Oliver Askew driving for Andretti Autosport, and Rinus VK staying with Juncos Racing. Came down to the final round of the series once again. Oliver Askew able to win that championship. Rinus has done a great job, though, his transition. Both Oliver and Rinus, of course, moving into the IndyCar program 2020. Oliver with Arrow McLaren SP, and Rinus with Ed Carpenter Racing. We saw Rinus win his first race earlier this year. one of the things that I can count on throughout a race weekend. While I've been doing this for a lot of years, I'm proud to have been the commentator, the voice of the road to Indy since 2010. And I got a lot of information in my hard drive in my head, but some stuff slips by. But every once in a while, I'll get a text during a broadcast from Steve Wittick from TSOladder.com and Trackside Online. Give me a little tidbit. Always gives me a little tidbit here and there. So back in 2017, I believe that would have been 2019, Steve, if I'm not mistaken. 2019, I think, for Askew, right, in Indy Lights. A 1:16.349 was the fast time for Oliver Askew. Opening practice, a 1:16.349. How about DeFrancesco's a 1:16.360? Almost identical lap times in the opening practice for Devlin DeFrancesco and Askew 2 years ago. Both, of course, with Andretti Autosport. It's crazy. A 3.49 to a 3.60, literally 0.11 of a second apart. Askew in 2019, DeFrancesco in 2021. So good to have the Indy Lights program back here this year. Man, it was a struggle when the series elected to put it on hiatus last year. Just didn't have the numbers that we needed, and we had enough cars to go if it weren't for COVID. But then with COVID, not being able to have people trackside for the events, so many of our drivers really rely on having that sponsorship, that activation, having their partners at the racetrack. And when we were not allowed to have spectators, just a couple of drivers were essentially saying, hey, we can't make this work this year. So tough call to sideline the series, which has been so crucial in filling the grids of the NTT IndyCar Series. Sidelining it for 1 year, came back with a vengeance, though, nicely. 13 cars throughout the majority of this season, and I'll tell you right now, based on all the off-season and off-track work that I've been doing, talking to the teams, I'm thinking 15 to 17 cars next year. Already having the announcement of a new team coming in, Tim Neff from TJ Speed, who purchased the assets from Belardi Auto Racing. They'll be back with a two-car effort next year, and there's a good possibility that 2 more teams will announce their intentions of running Indy Lights next year. So more teams means more race cars, more seats, more opportunities. So best case scenario would be 20 cars, probably more realistically 15 to 17 next year as the growth continuing here for this Indy Lights program. Kudos to everybody from Anderson Promotions who has worked so hard to develop this level of the program. Of course, 3 rungs of the road to Indy, USF 2000, Indy Pro, and Indy Lights all working synchronously together. Again, round 17 and 18 of the program. 20 races in total. We'll cap things off with the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course on the October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd weekend. $1.25 million going to the champion in Indy Lights, over $700,000 to the champion in Indy Pro 2000, and over $350,000 to the champion in USF 2000. A lot of great stuff coming up soon from the Road to Indy camp. Stay tuned. Exciting news. 8.5 minutes remaining. And a 1:16.360 for Devlin DeFrancesco, fastest driver on the racetrack in the Power Tap Hydrogen number 16. Probably the easiest car to find on the racetrack, that day glow yellow. Man, that hits hard. But I'm sure that the turn announcers for the IndyCar Radio Network thrilled to be able to pick that race car up anytime. When cars start blending together, team cars look kind of alike, it's tougher to pick them up, that's for sure. They have to have a couple of small little markings, potentially different end plate colors, whatever it may be, to be able to differentiate the teams. No issues at all with Devlin DeFrancesco's bright yellow machine. Top 9 drivers still separated by less than a second. Kirkwood, Frost, and Suleiman all in pit lane now with 7.5 to go. Again, back here this afternoon, 1:30 Pacific, with a half-hour qualifying session for the drivers here in Indy Lights. We'll have it here again on Sirius XM 205, as well as the Road to Indy app, IndyLights.com, Road to Indy, RoadToIndy.tv, another way to pick it up. A lot of ways to follow along. And as I said as well, the full IndyCar radio crew will be ready to go here on Saturday and Sunday. Anchor Nick Yeoman will handle the crew that consists of Jake Query, Michael Young, myself, and Alex Wolf on pit lane throughout the weekend. Dan Ruzanowski, the voice of the San Jose Sharks, will be helping us out as well for the pit lane coverage of the NTT IndyCar Series sessions. Driver analyst Davey Hamilton will on for the ride as well. Great to have Davey with us again here in 2021. Yeah, as I expected, I'm not seeing anybody yet come in to put fresh rubber on. We have a couple drivers coming into pit lane right now. Stingray Robb has rolled into his spot as well. Stingray, of course, running the white, blue, and red Road to Indy Scholarship colors. Last year, Stingray Robb, the driver out of Idaho, winning the Indy Pro 2000 category, scored his first victory in the series at Mid-Ohio midway through the season, and that victory at Mid-Ohio for Stingray Robb opened the doors, opened the floodgates, if you will, as he stormed to the championship, locking it in at New Jersey Motorsports Park before the finale. Winning the scholarship to move to Indy Lights this year. It's been an up and down season for Stingray, but again, learning a ton ahead of coming back next year, currently sitting 10th in the points. Three eighth-place finishes, the top results for Stingray this year, the Juncos Racing Machine. Stingray, one of the drivers who was in the Indy Lights Championship battle here 2 years ago. Had a win going, his first victory. One of the slower cars that was about to be lapped had tossed a bunch of gravel, went off the racetrack going into turn 5. All that gravel coming out of right on the exit turn number 5. Stingray rolling through with a sizable lead over Kyle Kirkwood, and the gravel sent him straight off the racetrack in turn 5. Able to control and get back on track, but not before Kirkwood slid through to get the race win. That was crucial for Kirkwood actually winning the championship, as he was in the middle of a heck of a battle with Rasmus Lindqvist throughout the final rounds of the series to see who was going to win that scholarship to move to Indy Lights. Time clicking away, 4 minutes to go. Interesting that the particular racetrack split up into 3 different sectors. And as we look at the segment times and the optimal laps, these theoretical best lap, if you lock together each driver's best segment time, fastest lap we would see. Again, theoretical best. Kyle Kirkwood a 1:15.9. His best lap's a 1:16.3. He has been the fastest driver at least one time in all 3 of the segments. 28.3 in the first segment, 29.9 in the second segment, and a 17.7 in segment number 3. But he hasn't put them all together into one magic lap to put him P1. Instead, P2. So just has not been able to blink all of them together for the theoretical best. I love looking down into the times like that. Kirkwood, Frost, DeFrancesco, the top 3 in the opening segment of the racetrack. Kirkwood, DeFrancesco, Malukas, the 3 quickest in segment number 2, and Kirkwood, Lint, and DeFrancesco in segment number 3. Speaks well for Rasmus Lindqvist, currently rolling back out onto the racetrack in that number 51. A lot of people rooting for Rasmus Lindqvist, driver from Sweden. Been doing a bunch of IMSA racing, sports car racing as well this season. really just happy to see him continue to race. Just a tremendous young man. Thrilled to have him here with us. Of course, another one of the drivers who has now come up through the entire road to Indy. USF 2000, Indy Pro, and Indy Lights. And man, I think everybody is crossing our fingers and hoping that somehow Rasmuth able to find the funding to race Indy Lights next year, because I'll tell you, right out of the gate, if he's with the right team, Rasmuth could easily be a title contender. That much talent for that Swedish driver. Again, part of the Swedish invasion. Marcus Erickson, as we know, just in a tremendous streak right now of consistent top 10 finishes, and scored his first win as well. His IndyCar career at Detroit earlier this year. Felix Rosenquist, another driver, multi-time winner in Indy Lights, racing with us when he drove for Bilardi Auto Racing, of course running for Aero McLaren SP. Just really hasn't had the luck this year for Felix, but a victory for him last year as well. Road America getting his first win. I think there's going to be lots of wins for Felix Rosenquist down the line, though. He's a talented driver, and I think that everybody knows that Aero McLaren SP has really turned things up. Pato Award, of course, in the middle of a championship scrap with Alex Palou, coming off that big victory at the Portland International Raceway for Alex Palou. As Alex would say, winner, winner, fried chicken dinner. Final minute of what has been a 45-minute practice session for the Indy Lights presented by Cooper Tires. We have turned a ton of laps. Devlin DeFrancesco still with that fastest lap. Amazingly, again, the information, little text that I got from Steve Wittick from Trackside Online at tsoladder.com, that back in 2019, Oliver Askew's fast time in the practice session, the opening practice session, when Indy Lights was here 2 years ago, a 1:16.349, and DeFrancesco 1:16.360. Those lap times 2 years apart, a difference of 11 hundredths of a second. Amazing. DeFrancesco still on top, Kirkwood second, Lind third, Malukas fourth, and Lundqvist in fifth. Three different teams in the top five. That's what I like to see. Juncos Racing. Juncos Hollinger Racing. That'll get drilled into my head here over the next year to get it dialed in. I've been saying Juncos Racing for, man, almost 15 plus years since Ricardo was back in his karting days, having his own karting team. It's now Juncos Hollinger Racing. Callum Eilert running for them this weekend. So drivers will see the checkered flag. We'll bring it in to cap off the session. Once they all do, we'll give you a full field rundown. Checkered flag, as I said, has been displayed here at start finish. Devlin DeFrancesco still holding on to the top spots. We, again, have been riding around here with Manuel Suleiman in the number 59 HMD Motorsports machine. Great shot of him coming up through that corkscrew, using every piece of the road, back down the hill through rainy curve, working that car. And again, as they come out of that corner, they'll get that alternate timing line, head to pit lane. Devlin DeFrancesco, fastest driver out of the gate here, a 1:16.360. That's the best practice session for DeFrancesco on the year, as he tops the 11 drivers. DeFrancesco 1:16.360. Kyle Kirkwood 1:16.370, back by just 9 thousandths of a second. Rasmus Lind for Juncos Hollinger Racing, very impressive in the number 51. What a good opening to the weekend for Rasmus, as he is in the third spot. David Malukas and Linus Lundqvist from HMD Motorsports and Global Racing Group in the fourth and fifth positions. Daniel Frost in sixth, Benjamin Peterson seventh, Robert McGinnis eighth, Stingray Rob ninth, Manuel Suleiman 10th, and Christian Bogle rounding out the 11 drivers. As I said, top 9 separated by less than a second. Again, a challenging racetrack here at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, and a great way to get out of the gate. No issues whatsoever. Clean and green through 45 minutes, and these drivers, of course, now will head back into the paddock, get a chance to sit down with their engineers. Deep debriefs to dial things in. There it is right there, folks. Devlin DeFrancesco, 1:16.360. Kyle Kirkwood, 1:16.370. Rasmussen Lint with a 1:16.6. Malukas and Lundqvist 1:16.7s. And Daniel Frost a 1:16.8. Good one, as I said, for Rasmussen Lint. Scored victory, a pole, and 2 podiums here at Laguna Seca in an Indy Pro 2000 category pack just 2 years ago. So that speaks very well for Rasmus potentially fighting for a race win or a podium throughout this weekend. Once again, those of you tuning in here on IndyCar Radio and Sirius XM or on the Road to Indy app, we're back here this afternoon at 1:30 Pacific for qualifying for race number 1. Tomorrow, 9:45 Pacific start time in the morning for qualifying for race 2. And we'll finally go wheel to wheel at 12:45 tomorrow afternoon, the front end of the doubleheader here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. We'll cap it all off with a morning run, 10:15 a.m. Pacific for race number 2. Again, those of you tuning in, it'll be myself here in the track PA for the qualifying session this afternoon, but tomorrow the entire IndyCar Radio Network crew back with you, led of course by anchor Nick Yeoman. We hope you join us throughout the weekend as the future stars of the NTT IndyCar Series back on the racetrack here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. Again, fantastic practice session for Devlin DeFrancesco and the Andretti Steinbrenner Autosport Power Tap Hydrogen number 17, a 1:16.360, topping the timesheet over Kyle Kirkwood and Rasmus Lindh. Thank you so much for joining us here, folks, today on IndyCar Radio. My name's Rob Howden. Bye for now.
As your uncle, I want you to know that on the road of life, there will be rough spots, and they will chew up your tires. I recently took a road trip to Greensville to attend a chili cook-off. Rough roads all the way down. I drove there on these Cooper Discoverer and Duramax tires. You know, they're made with the durability of off-road tires, but for on-road driving. Without them, we might never know the winning bean-to-meat ratio of a good chili. And those are the things in life, my friend, worth driving towards. So go with the Coopers. Cooper! I'm hungry now.
With over 40 years in business, High Tide Boat Lifts is committed to elevating your craft. Whether you own a personal watercraft or a large yacht, we can design and create the perfect lift for your needs. At High Tide Boat Lifts, we understand that you've worked hard to get to a successful place in life. We'll ensure you have a hassle-free experience, maximizing the time you spend on your boat with family and friends, and supporting your dreams out on the open water.